And do you know offhand, maybe this can be gotten later, where other places that justices, not just Justice Ginsburg, but where other countries, transitioning countries that they have visited, and what the actual program, what is the actual program under which they go?
Yeah, I mean, they sometimes go under ABA programs that we fund, American Bar Association programs. Sometimes they go under embassy invitation for specific justice programs that the embassies are managing under our Middle East initiatives on transition. When I was in Brussels, we had a number of justices come through to work with the European Union on some of its legislative issues, and particularly how the U.S. and the EU could cooperate to solve some of our efforts to coordinate our judicial systems so that we are pulling in the same direction. So they go all over the world, not just to transitioning countries, but also to some of our closest allies and partners.
In this case of her, was it an invitation from the embassy, or was it another broader program?
I don't know. We'll check on that for you, Matt. I don't know what the specific program was. Please.
Question on Uzbekistan. Are you able to comment on reports of the reports out there today that the administration waived a ban on non-lethal military assistance to Uzbekistan on a temporary basis? Are you able to confirm that and offer any guidance?
I am. Under the Foreign Operations and Related Programs Act of 2012, the Secretary of State has the authority to waive certain restrictions on assistance to the government of Uzbekistan if she certifies that it is in the national security interest of the United States to do so, and also that it's necessary to obtain access to and from Afghanistan for U.S. assistance to that country. The Secretary has issued such a waiver in this case. She made the determination on January 18th, and we put it forward to the Hill a couple of days later. It is a 6-month waiver. This is the first time we have done this one. She'll have to review again 6 months from now, and this is waiver authority that we have through 2013.
And there are some critics that will say that this is giving the Uzbek government a free pass on alleged abuses they committed. Is there any response to that sort of criticism for taking this action?
Well, we certainly reject the notion that anybody's being given a free pass on human rights. As you know, the Secretary was in Uzbekistan in October, had a chance to work on the full range of our bilateral and regional issues, but also spoke very frankly to President Karimov, to members of his government, about our ongoing interest in support for human rights, reforming the system, our concern about individual cases. So this is part and parcel of our diplomacy. She also spoke out very clearly the day before in Tajikistan about our specific concerns about the rights of minorities, the rights of children, the rights of women, about the court system, all of these kinds of things. So nobody is shying away from having the tough conversation. That said, we also have other interests and things that we need to protect in our relationship with Uzbekistan.
So you seem to say that this equipment or whatever it is going to be used for the Northern Distribution Network? Is that the idea?
Yeah, examples of the kinds of things that this waiver was given for. This will enhance the Uzbeks' ability to counteract transnational terrorism and all things like night vision goggles, personal protection equipment, global positioning systems. It's defensive in nature, and it's also supportive of their ability to secure the routes in and out of Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression it was weapons, and this is all non-lethal stuff?
I don't have exactly, but beyond what I just gave you, examples of equipment, vision goggles, personal protection equipment, it's all defensive in nature. With regard to lethal, non-lethal, let me get that for you, Matt.
There wasn't that. I mean, there were restrictions in the law
on any.
Yeah, but they had already been. I guess I don't understand, because while we were there,
right,
this was a topic of discussion, and it was maybe I was a misimpression, but it was my impression that they were already getting non-lethal stuff.
I can't speak to what.
There had been a decision almost a year ago on.
I think that whatever we had on the books had expired and needed to be renewed, but we can get you a brief on the precise details, yeah.
Okay, yeah, please, because it came up, it was a topic of, I remember it being a topic of conversation, at least on the plane.
Well, one of the topics of conversation was that the Uzbeks were asking for more than we were giving and were concerned about their ability to protect the routes and concerned about their ability to be effective counterterrorism partners. So, please.
Change of subject.
Yeah.
The India's External Affairs Ministry today announced that India's Foreign Secretary will be visiting U.S. next week. Do you know who he will be meeting in this building and what?
I don't. We'll get that for you. Yeah. Anything else in the back, please?
I don't know if this has been asked earlier, but do you have a reaction to the new NATO report that has been leaked and mentions ISI links with Taliban?
Yeah, let me just, first of all, I think NATO itself has spoken to this earlier in the day. So obviously I'm not going to get into a classified report. NATO itself said it was not going to get into a classified report. But what I can do is sort of characterize this report in general terms because it's one of a regular series. The context, as described by NATO, is that this is basically a summary of the views of those Taliban that we have in detention. So it's a summary of what they think, what they believe to be true. So that's just one source of information. And frankly, I think you may also have heard Foreign Minister Carr on this subject. She was quite eloquent about this when she was in Kabul earlier today.
They have dismissed the report today, but do you think such a report at this juncture, when the tension after the 26/11 attack is still lingering on, will further escalate the tension in the relationship?
Well, again, this is a classified report. It is part of a regular series. It shouldn't have come out into the open. It was not designed for any purpose other than to help those in the field understand what Taliban detainees were saying, so it was in no way designed to impact on our ongoing efforts to get back on track with Pakistan, which continue.
And lastly, your counterpart at Pentagon this morning said that what has been mentioned about these links in the report is nothing new, and U.S. has been saying this earlier as well. Do you agree with his statement that these links are still there, and do you intend to raise this with the Pakistani administration?
Well, as you know, the Secretary raised many of these issues when she was in Pakistan last fall. So from that perspective, obviously this is not new. Our concerns about safe havens, our concerns about whether together we are doing enough to go after these groups, our interest in cooperating with the Pakistanis to do more. So that's the conversation that we've been having for some time, and the exact sort of kind of cooperation we want to get back to as soon as we can.
Given the interest in the U.S. Trying to apparently talk with the Taliban as part of an overall peace framework in Afghanistan, is the leaking of this document, one, curious, and two, does it give people pause about the efforts to win hearts and minds in Afghanistan?
Well, I think we've always said, and the Secretary said, that in the context of our larger strategy here, we need to fight, talk, and build at the same time. So it doesn't change the fact that those Taliban who continue to take up arms against the state of Afghanistan, against innocents in Afghanistan, are going to be confronted. Going to be confronted by Afghan security forces. They're going to be confronted by NATO supporting those forces. So that continues. At the same time, we support the efforts of the Afghan government to create a real channel with those Afghans who are ready for reconciliation, and that's what we've been working on. Please say.
On Afghanistan itself.
Still in Afghanistan?
Can you, since Ambassador Grossman is back now,
He is.
Can you give us an update on the talk portion of this strategy, where we are now?
Well, I think we've said a number of times as well that we're not going to get into the back and forth. Ambassador Grossman spoke about where he was when he was in Kabul at the beginning of last week. He's made a number of trips since, but I don't think we have anything further on that. He did do some interviews with the Pakistani press yesterday, I think, which I would call your attention to. Please. Yeah.
There's a Japanese delegation coming tomorrow to speak about Iran sanctions. I'm wondering who they're going to be meeting with here and kind of the scope of their talks.
I don't have the precise level of the delegation, but as you know, Undersecretary Sherman is leading the department's effort to consult with countries around the world on the new legislation, to work with allies, partners around the world to try to reduce everybody's dependence on Iranian crude. I don't know whether she's seeing this delegation herself or whether some of her team are, but we had pledged to the Japanese when Special Envoy Einhorn was there a couple of weeks ago that we would really do a roll-up-our-sleeves session with them on how we can move forward on this together. So my understanding is that's what they're coming to do. Yeah.
Closer to publishing, and I know it's Treasury and not State, but you guys are involved in the process in publishing the regulations on how the sanctions will be implemented?
We are working on it, Arshad. As you say, Treasury has the lead, so I would refer you to Treasury on the timeline.
Because you got 4 weeks left now before the first set kick in.
Understood. Please.
Assistant Secretary Campbell's visit to Korea, and also you have another delegation, they visit Russia. Do you have anything to share?
Well, first with regard to Russia, our Special Envoy for North Korea, Glenn Davies, is in Moscow. He's done consultations with all of the key players on the Russian side who are involved in the six-party talks. Specifically, he and Ford Hart met today with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Morgalev, with Ambassador at Large for Six-Party Talks Logvinov, Special Envoy for Trilateral Economic Projects Timonin, and MFA First Asia Department Mr. Kulik, and their IAEA guy Grigory Burdenikov. So very broad consultations in Moscow, obviously designed to ensure we all stay on the same page with regard to our expectations of the DPRK before we could come back to the talks. Assistant Secretary Campbell has done a full presser in Seoul, so I would refer you to that, but he saw his usual folks both on the bilateral relationship and on DPRK issues, and he's now on his way to Vietnam, or he just landed in Vietnam and has meetings tomorrow. Yeah, please.
Can we go back to Syria for a minute?
Yeah.
It's okay with everybody. I wanted to ask you about the status of the embassy, if there's anything new, and Ambassador Ford in particular about his activities.
Nothing new on the embassy. As you know, we are continuing to press the Syrian government to make the security upgrades that we think are necessary. We are not where we need to be yet. Ambassador Ford continues to maintain close contacts with a broad cross-section of Syrians and to continue to, I mean, obviously he's been involved in recent days in making clear our view going into the Security Council and amplifying the Secretary's messages in New York.
But there's been no extraordinary measures, let's say, in the last couple of days since the fighting has gotten closer and closer to Damascus, has there?
Well, you can be sure that I'm not going to talk about the precise security measures that we're taking in Damascus or anywhere else.
No, I mean in terms of maintaining operations in Damascus.
The embassy remains open. You saw that the Canadians today did announce that they were closing. Our operations are open, but our concerns remain.
Okay, but so we're not likely to see this trend that was announced by the Canadians?
We're not going to have any announcements today, if that's what you're asking, Saeed.